Following election 2012 debate is brought to you by the AARP, MarylandReporter.com, and hosted by Montgomery College. The AARP MarylandReporter.com 6th Congressional District Democratic Primary Debate, moderated by Len Lazarek.
My name is Hank Greenberg, and I'm the State Director for Maryland AARP, and I want to welcome you all to this candidates debate sponsored by AARP Maryland and MarylandReporter.com and the 6th Congressional District Primary Debates. I'd like to thank the MarylandReporter.com for partnering with us, and we're happy to work with them to offer this opportunity to the voters in the 6th Congressional District of Maryland. We hope today's debate will give you an opportunity to take a closer look at the candidates and hear directly from them about the issues that matter to you. I also want to thank Montgomery College for hosting us today. And with that, I will turn it over to Len Lazarek, the editor and publisher of the MarylandReporter.com and our moderator for today's debate. Thank you all.
As Hank said, I'm Len Lazarek, editor and publisher of MarylandReporter.com. We're a 2-year-old news website that covers state government and politics. This is somewhat nostalgic for me, as the first congressional race I ever covered was the 6th Congressional District race in 1976. That's when Howard County was still part of the 6th Congressional District.
You're like 4 years old.
There were no cell phones. There were no faxes. There were no gray hair, and things are very different. I'm not sure whether there was an AARP back then. Maybe so. I want to thank AARP Maryland for partnering with us and sponsoring this debate. Thanks to Montgomery College for having us here in Globe Hall. It was very important to me as we put this together that not just the people in this room, but other people be able to see this debate. So it's being videotaped by Montgomery College Television. It's going to run 12 times on their website starting Monday night. Not on their website. It will be on their website via YouTube, but it also will be on cable channel 10 in Montgomery County. We hope to get it elsewhere. We MarylandReporter.com will also be linking to the YouTube on our website. If you'd like to, we do a daily email newsletter that you can sign up for at a table as you go out here. So end of the commercial. We got, fortunately, not as many candidates as the Republican candidates. Earlier today we did the 8 Republican candidates. Here's how this debate is going to work. The candidates are going to have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and tell us why they are the best candidate to represent this district. Then we'll go into a series of questions. The candidates will have 1.5 minutes to answer these questions. That's not a lot of time, but it's better than a minute. We have a timer sitting in the front row who will give a 15-second warning. That's that yellow triangle that you can barely see, and a very clear red stop sign when you've used up your time. The candidates have not seen these questions. We are going to start with the introductions with Charles Bailey, and then we'll follow alphabetically in order. So the first question after the introductory remarks will be directed to John Delaney. And then the other questions will go around the table in alphabetical order. Toward the end of the debate, using the same format, we'll be asking questions that have been submitted by members of the audience. There are cards available to write out the questions. You can write out your questions. People will collect them. There's a table of screeners over there which are largely looking at whether the questions are of general interest. They'll be handed on to me. We'll probably only have time for 3 or 4 of those questions. There are no closing statements, although I will let the candidates know what the last question is so they can use the answer to the last question as part of a closing statement. We don't have any rebuttals built in. The candidates can use their time in response to the following question if they feel they need to rebut something that was said by one of the candidates. And for the people who might be thinking of submitting questions, I'll just let you know the topics we're going to be covering today. This is AARP sponsored, so obviously we have things related to retirement savings, Social Security, Medicare, jobs in the economy. I'm asking things about a question about Afghanistan and Iran, energy and gas prices, immigration, and then throw in your own topic, if you will. The Democratic candidates we have up here are Charles Bailey, John Delaney, Rob Garagiola, Ron Little, and Malad Paran. So we're going to start out with Mr. Bailey, and we'll go down the line with 2-minute introductory statements.
Thank you. I'm Charles Bailey. I'm running for the 6th District Democrat nomination. I want to thank AARP and Mr. Lazarus of the Maryland Reporter for putting on this show.
You might want to pull the mic closer. You think so, folks?
Can you hear me okay?
Can you hear it? Yeah. All right.
Thank you for coming today. I see a lot of people in the audience. Good turnout. We're very encouraged by that. It's quite encouraging. I think we're seeing something in the air here in the past few days. Everyone on this panel, I believe, is encouraged by your turnout. I live in Washington County with my young son. I'm a single parent. And my past history, I've been a veteran and an assistant public defender in Hagerstown for many years. And during my work as an assistant public defender and my experience as a single father, I've seen what this man-made economic disaster has done to those among us who are least able to withstand any hardship, and that is the single parent. I say single parent, but by far the majority of people to whom I refer are the single moms. These folks who are operating at a disadvantage because of their sex, they get 70 cents on every dollar paid to their male colleagues. I think it's high time we recognize that women are equal citizens. We've learned this winter that corporations are considered equal citizens. But this past Thursday, I believe it was, our Senator Ben Cardin introduced legislation in the Senate to pass or revive the Equal Rights Amendment. I think it's key that we do that. It's time to recognize women as equal citizens. Also, I think it's incredibly important to recognize that the 6th District has been neglected these past 20 years to such extent that our young people have to move away to find work or stay home and live on their parents' retirement. The Republican Party is responsible for this. The neglectful and reckless policies of the past 20 years has resulted in a net decrease in jobs for our youth. It's time for emergency measures. I would suggest a public works project to get people working now, a public works project now so that the workers will have money in their pockets and college courses in new technology, so they would be the new workers of the next generation. You'd start reviving economy by putting money in the pockets of the workers. That's my stand. I'm Charles Bailey. Thank you.
John Delaney.
Thank you. And thank you for being here, everyone, this afternoon. I'm John Delaney. I live in Montgomery County. I'm the father of 4 daughters. My youngest is age 4, my oldest is 19. My wife, April Delaney, is a leader in the nonprofit community here in Washington. I grew up in a working class family. Neither of my parents had the privilege of going to college. And my father was a lifelong union electrician, and he still is a card-carrying member of the union. And it's because of his union I had the opportunity to go to college. They gave me a scholarship. And based on the benefits of that education and the support of my wife, I've started 2 businesses across the last 20 years here in Maryland, in Montgomery County. And those businesses have created over 1,000 jobs. And these were startup businesses, didn't exist before. And what those businesses do is focus on lending money to small companies, the kind of companies that have been ignored by the big banks. And I'm very proud of the track record of those businesses. And one of the things I'm most proud of is the fact that the Obama administration gave us an award in 2010 for our commitment to lending money to small companies in underserved communities and doing it in an ethical and responsible way. And April and I made the decision to run for Congress based on the continuation of our commitment to our community. We've been lifelong members of our community from a community service perspective, been honored in our community across the last 20 years for the work that we've done. And I believe my experience, which is unique as a job creator, is needed in Washington. I think the level of unemployment in this country is tragic, and I think the trends are even more concerning. And what is equally tragic is the fact that we've seen this coming and we know exactly what we need to do to turn them around, and we're not doing it. We're not investing in our educational system. We're not investing in comprehensive energy policy, immigration reform, deficit reduction, the kind of things we need to do. And the reason for that is because the people in Congress are not worried about the American citizens. They're not worried about the economy. They're worried about themselves and their careers, and I promise to change that. John Delaney for Congress. I've been endorsed by the Washington Post and President Bill Clinton because of my ideas. Thank you.
Before I turn to Senator Gradiola, I forgot I wrote it down on my earlier script. Please put your cell phones on silent, and you can take photographs, but do not use flash. And if you videotape, just do it from your seat. Thanks. Senator Gradiola.
Great, thank you. Rob Garagiola, thank you all for being here. Thank ARP and Len Lazarick for moderating this. Appreciate the turnout that we have on a Sunday afternoon. I actually live in Germantown. This is the community that I live in, and I've served as a state senator representing this community for the last 10 years. I'm currently the Senate Majority Leader. And I'm proud of the things that I've done over the last 10 years. We've made investment in education. We've got the #1 schools in the country 4 years in a row. Investment we've made in higher education, renewable energy and green jobs, investment in our economy and in small businesses. I've got a proud record, and I think we have a wonderful state because of some of the things we've done in Annapolis the last 10 years. At the same time, I'm very frustrated by what's going on in this Congress in particular and what I've seen over the last number of years. We've seen the middle class, as far as income and net wealth, in decline. And on the heels of the worst recession since the Great Depression, I feel that this Congress has been very unresponsive as far as focusing on growing our economy in jobs. I feel that this Congress, instead of focusing on jobs and the economy, has done an all-out assault on women's reproductive rights, which I think is outrageous. I think rather than focusing on jobs and the economy, this Congress has looked to make reductions in Medicare and Medicaid funding last year, and they're trying it again this year. I worked on Capitol Hill in the 1990s when the Republicans took the Congress over, and I remember Newt Gingrich saying he wanted Medicare to wither on the vine. Well, we fought it back then, and we know what happened back then. We're going to need to fight it again because this Congress is going in the wrong direction on that. I think this Congress is going in the wrong direction on trying to dismantle environmental regulations and not putting forward an energy policy. We're at a crossroads right now, and there's a lot of important things at stake. A number of organizations have endorsed my candidacy, including the Montgomery County teachers, the state teachers, national teachers, AFL-CIO, Progressive Maryland, League of Conservation Voters, Sierra Club, a number of organizations, and I'm hoping to get your support this April 3rd. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And thank you, Mr. Lazarick, for moderating and AARP for hosting. My name is Ron Little. My wife, Kimberly, and I, with our 3 children, Ronald, Catherine, and Christina, live here in Gaithersburg. My wife and I moved here as a military family in 1998 and decided that this would be a fantastic place to raise our family. And in doing so, made a commitment to this community, a commitment that meant giving something back beyond, our taxpayer base, what we contribute. So we decided to engage in as many community activities as possible. And during the past 14 years, we've done many things. I've served as president of the District 19 Democratic Club and, as a regular member. And in doing so, have forged relationships with people at, Leisure World and Homecrest House and, just different segments of the community where ideas and perspectives are different but necessary for all of us to grow. Women's health care issues have been a big deal for my wife and I, and we've volunteered with Komen for the past 14 years, raising money and increasing visibility. I decided to run because what I saw in this race was something that mimicked what we already have in Congress, money and power. And our Congress is failing because of money and power. Our founding fathers envisioned a citizen legislature where your attorneys or your bakers or your bankers, they left their jobs temporarily to go serve their public. And I would tell you that I've been serving this public for 14 years, and I've been doing it as a volunteer. My full-time job is as an antitrust attorney. And in my spare time, I give back to the community as much as I can. And I do so out of love for this community. And that's what this campaign is about. I would tell you that our problems, they're not as complicated as one would like to believe. We can make Social Security solvent by eliminating the income cap. Our problems are relatively simple. We just need to take a different perspective in approaching them. Thank you.
Dr. Paran?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Milad Puran, and I live in Jefferson, Maryland. I am a doctor, and for the past 13 years have proudly served in the United States military, including a tour of duty in Iraq as a combat critical care doctor. When I was 6 years old, my parents' vision brought my family to America. Now I'm running for Congress because I refuse to accept the end of the American dream that brought my family here. I'm running for Congress because too many of us are struggling to find meaningful work. I'm running to fix a tax system that shelters those who can most afford to pay their fair share, but punishes those of us who work the hardest. I'm running to return our education system to what it once was, a ladder into the middle class for millions of Americans. And I'm running to ensure that every American has access to quality and affordable health care, and that we protect the rights of women to self-determination. Now, as Democratic candidates, we agree on a lot of things, but there are major issues that we disagree on. Let me give you one example of differences between us. I'm a doctor, the other four gentlemen are lawyers. Now, as a doctor, I'm trained to look at evidence and act. As lawyers, they're trained to look at evidence and argue. Now, Governor Howard Dean, I'm proud that he has said that I'm the only candidate who can stand up to the Republican attacks in the fall and win and beat Roscoe Bartlett and the Republicans in November. And when you go to vote, that's one major question that you have to ask yourself in the differences between us and in your choices. Which one of us has the right record of public service, the right personal story to withstand the Republican attack machine in the fall and win in November? I present a real choice. We can't afford another term with Roscoe Bartlett. The new 6th District deserves better. I thank you for your support on April 3rd and on to November. Thank you.
You're allowed to applaud if you want to. So we're going to start the questions with Mr. Delaney. This one is about retirement savings. Today, nearly half of all retirees rely on Social Security as their primary source of income. What policies would you promote to help people save for retirement?
Well, in terms of policies I would promote, there's a broad range of issues we should cover here. First, let's talk about Social Security and Medicare, which are central to who we are as a society, and it should be preserved. And one of the things that I've discussed on the campaign is increasing the cap so that Social Security can be funded beyond the 2035 date that it's presently funded through. And by simply raising or eliminating the cap, we can fund Social Security for 75 years. So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing is I think there needs to be a kind of a broad-based approach to financial literacy in this country, starting with kids who are in school and continuing through adulthood. And part of that should be tied to the role of government in terms of regulating financial institutions through the new Consumer Finance Agency. And I think one of the things we've lost as a country is this notion that we have to save for our retirement. And we should be prudent in terms of how we live our lives. And we see that with so many young children these days, that they aren't taught basic financial literacy and they don't understand how to save for the future. So I think this notion of saving for retirement, I think we have to start by recognizing that Social Security is central to who we are as a country. We need to take the steps necessary to protect Social Security, and that's relatively easy to do by raising the cap or eliminating the cap. And then I think we need to have a broader-based approach to making sure Americans understand the importance of saving for their retirement, because right now, as a country, if Social Security were to be eliminated or reduced, 20 to 30 million Americans would fall below the poverty line. That's why this is such an important issue.
I don't think you're going to get much disagreement on this issue from the folks up here. There are many in Congress that are talking about privatizing Social Security. If that were to occur and we just relied on the markets completely, many wouldn't have any retirement savings at all. It's a critical bedrock in our retirement security, and we need to make sure we preserve it. I think you're going to hear from all of us about eliminating the cap on Social Security. I think that needs to be done as well. Obviously agree with respect to financial literacy. There are a number of things that we need to do, but to privatize Social Security, I would strongly oppose that. Lift the cap, have everyone paying into it. It extends the solvency of it. We need to maintain it as the basic bedrock of all of our retirement security, and that's very important to me, and you can count on me to fight for that if I'm a member of Congress.
We'll find ourselves parroting ourselves a lot, so we'll try to make some distinctions where we can. It's important to recognize that while we advocate to make sure that Social Security is solvent, that we also pay attention to some of the things that limit people's ability to provide for themselves. That means making sure that people have access to health care and that health care costs stay within manageable means for people that live on fixed incomes. That also means making sure that the markets that determine our prices are properly regulated so that we don't have speculators driving up the costs of the things that people rely on every day. These are multifaceted approaches to addressing problems that have been neglected for the better part of this last half of century. We need to make sure that when we address problems of solvency and expenditures, that we take it from an approach where we're really being equitable about where the responsibility lies, that everyone who has an obligation to contribute is contributing their fair share, and that the bulk of what we're responsible for doesn't fall on the decaying middle class. The middle class is gone, and as long as we don't fight to revive the middle class, none of these problems are going to go away, and we're not going to be able to provide funds for anything.
So let's dispel some myths about our deficit. Social Security and Medicare are not the cause of our national deficit. It's unfunded wars or wars that we borrowed against. And so that's simply wrong. And it's the Bush tax cuts that need to expire. And then the second myth is that Social Security and Medicare are bankrupt or insolvent. They're not. They need attention, but they don't need panic. I disagree with Senator Garagiola. There is actually great differences on this panel about this issue. My dear friend John Delaney, he said as early as yesterday in a forum in Cumberland and on his website that he's a proponent of the Bowles-Simpson Commission recommendations. Well, here's what Bowles-Simpson says. It wants to increase the retirement age, cut Social Security benefits across the board, de-link paying in versus taking out of benefits, which will decrease public support. And it will cut back on cost of adjustment, annual cost of adjustment, COLA, amongst other things. All these things cut at benefits as their source of saving. I frankly disagree with this. This is wrong. We should not pivot Medicare on the backs of the middle class and on those who can least afford, our most vulnerable. And this is something that I think, frankly, Mr. Delaney needs to explain himself, because if he believes in Bowles-Simpson, then he also believes in these draconian cuts to Social Security and Medicare, which I completely disagree with.
Mr. Bailey. The question
Social-
was about retirement
Thank you.
savings.
Social
if I'm right.
Security should not be touched. And I think there should be something said for the possibility that an economic revival will lift all boats. We rebound the economy in the 6th District. Everybody's retirement is going to improve. And I see in the future for the 6th District, the innovative and bold research and development in the technological labs of Montgomery and Frederick counties will be neatly complemented with a refitted state-of-the-art manufacturing in the west, so that this whole district can become sort of a mini Silicon Valley, centered around the community colleges in line with the President's State of the Union address, where people will get trained in new technologies as they come online. It's very important to remember that everybody's retirement will improve if the economy improves. We start with the workers. Thank you.
So we did start with you with this question, John, didn't we?
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Okay. Since these Social Security retirement things tend to go together, let's talk about Medicare, and then we'll move on to some other topics. So beginning with Rob Garagiola, how would you put Medicare on stronger financial ground and protect today's seniors and future retirees from the burden of rising health costs?
Thank you. I remember when I was working on Capitol Hill for a member of Congress in 1994, and that was the year that the contract with America and Newt Gingrich came into power. And one of the first things they sought to do was have, quote, Medicare wither on a vine. The member of Congress that I was working for was a co-chair of a Democratic health care task force, was working with then Minority Leader Dick Gephardt to message and to fight the Republican cuts to the Medicare program. We ended up doing hearings on the Capitol lawn and a number of other things. As I mentioned in my introductory statements, we've seen this playbook before, and we stopped Republicans in their tracks on it. I believe that we need to do the same thing now with the proposed budget that Congressman Ryan has put forward that would do much of the same thing, undermine the Medicare program. Now, there are a number of things that we have in place right now that just need to be implemented, and that one of those is the President's Affordable Care Act. There are provisions in there that provide cost savings across the board that will affect health care, whether you're getting health insurance from your employer or yourself, or whether you're getting it through Medicare. There are cost savings that can be realized across the board. In addition, as part of the provisions in the Affordable Care Act, President Obama's Health Care Act, there are provisions in there to look at the spending that goes on with respect to medical devices, prescription drugs, and other items to try to bring down the cost of the Medicare program. And the third thing that we need to look at is health information technology. As a Maryland state senator, Maryland has been on the cutting edge as a state in trying to get greater interoperability between pharmacists, medical providers, and hospitals in reducing health complications, but also reducing health care costs. And I think we can find savings within the Medicare program by implementing more of that as well. Thank you.
Mr. Little?
Our biggest burden with healthcare is cost. Cost and access. Lack of access leads to increased cost. As a member or as a military family member, I'm obligated to go to Walter Reed for medical treatment. And a lot of people in this area are similarly situated. And if you happen to fall ill and you don't have an appointment, you go and you sit and you wait. And if you're not seen during normal business hours, you're forced to go to the emergency room, which increases the cost almost 3 times just sitting in the emergency room. People that have difficulty now with Medicare is because of cost of prescriptions as well. We subsidize these industries. We subsidize these industries with taxpayer dollars, and people are having to make choices between providing for themselves with food or shelter or other necessities in terms of whether or not they're going to get their medicine. And we talk about it every day, but these people that really live on fixed incomes shouldn't have to make those choices. And the way that we correct it is to regulate the industry that determines what these costs are. We have lots of organizations in this country, and we have lots of agencies in the country that do not properly regulate, and costs are allowed to be driven through the roof, so much so that your average citizen cannot afford the care that they need. President Obama's plan will help address some of these needs, but it needs more attention. And if that means addressing single payer options as well, then that's what we do.
So as a doctor, I could talk about this topic for hours, frankly. But let's talk about Medicare. So Medicare is not insolvent. We should not put Medicare through a voucher system as the Ryan plan proposes. It's absolutely wrong. There's no reason to privatize public funds. And frankly, the voucher system, every year that you would get a voucher, you would be able to buy less and less health insurance with it. So that's absolutely unacceptable. What we need to do with Medicare is to expand Medicare down to ages 55 to 65, allow them to buy that on the exchange markets that the health exchanges that the Affordable Care Act set up, and then eventually extend Medicare, in my opinion, to a single payer system for all Americans. Now, again, I'll go back to the Simpson-Bowles plan. Simpson-Bowles would actually increase the out-of-pocket expenses for Medicare, presumably by copay. We're kind of unclear about this, but irrespective, the humble benefits that people get. My grandmother was on Social Security and Medicare for the last years of her life. You know, the average recipient of Social Security benefits gets about $1,100 a month, so that's $14,000. And now you're asking them to pay about $4,000 towards their health care, towards their other benefits. So that literally leaves an elderly person in this country with less than $10,000 to live off of. And we know that 2/3 of their income is dependent on Social Security. That's frankly unacceptable. We need to not touch Social Security and Medicare. We need to make them stronger for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bailey?
I'm a big fan of Senator Whitehouse of Rhode Island. It's a funny name, Senator Whitehouse. But he's a genius on the subject of Medicare. I saw him on C-SPAN on the Senate floor take out his wallet and pull out a little plastic card and say, I can go anywhere in the world, plug this into an ATM, and find out all the details about my financial records. But every time I go to the doctor, I have to get all those tests done again. And it would be a crime to reduce Medicare benefits given the inefficiency, the duplicitous testing, and the unnecessary procedures over and over again. He's a very good proponent for modifying the health delivery system so that Medicare is affordable and is not to be challenged. Medicare should not be touched. Thank you.
Mr. Delaney?
Thank you. So in terms of controlling healthcare costs, let me start by saying I'm supportive of the Affordable Care Act, primarily because I think universal healthcare will look back in the fullness of time and wonder what we were talking about. I don't think this will be a debatable point in the future. But more work needs to be done to control healthcare costs. We need tort reform. We need to allow the federal government to negotiate directly with drug companies. We need to have more primary care physicians, more nurse practitioners and physician assistants in the systems. We need to redesign the delivery of healthcare systems to take advantage of technology and to allow us to squeeze out the waste in the system and eliminate fraud in the system. We have to recognize that many of the reasons our healthcare costs are going up is exactly what we wanted. We're living longer. Terrible diseases now become chronic diseases. This comes with a cost, and we need to embrace technology. We need to embrace the next generation of kind of genetic advances. We'll be able to predict diseases and deal with preventative medicine. This work needs to be done, and this is important work. Switching gears and in response to the Bowles-Simpson, yes, I am supportive of Bowles-Simpson. And the reason I'm supportive of Bowles-Simpson is not because it has draconian cuts to benefits. In fact, the AARP in their policy statements has been very constructive on the proposals put forth in Bowles-Simpson. I'm supportive of Bowles-Simpson because I think the deficit issue facing the country essentially puts the republic at risk across the long term. And we have to be honest with Americans, and we have to understand to deal with this issue, we have to do it from a spirit of compromise. And when politicians tell you, or people running for office tell you that they would never ever do anything, they're basically saying they're going to let the country go down. Thank you.
Next question starts with Mr. Little. It's about jobs in the economy. Millions of Americans have lost their jobs. How would you help Americans, especially those 50 and over, get back to work and improve the economy for all Americans?
We need to be creative. You know, we talk about infrastructure investment, and we can build roads and we can improve bridges and we can do lots of things, advancing technologies, robotics plants. I had a discussion with an older member of the community, and they were regretful. They were regretful because there are opportunities that we simply don't take advantage of. Education is a big, big deal in this country. for all of us, not just me. When I was a kid growing up, I always had older teachers in the classroom, adjuncts, people that could help provide some additional services to students. Those are opportunities that we could offer people 50 and up that want to contribute in a way that's easier on their back, it's easier on their knees, it's easier on them. They can determine how much time they want to contribute. And we can pay them for these things. We need to identify ways that people want to contribute, but we can't do that unless we start the conversation. So when we talk about building jobs, we need to look at it from a really micro level, at each community level. Have a conversation with each community and say, where do you have your needs and how can I, as your congressman, help you facilitate them? If that means making funds available, then that's what we do. If that means starting a program, then we do that as well. But we can't make these decisions without getting the community involved.
Dr. Perron?
Thank you. So there's only one elderly person who I think should no longer have their job, and that's Roscoe Bartlett. That's not because I don't think 85-year-olds can do a great job in Congress. I just don't think this particular one has done a very good job. I think in terms of the workforce, we have to look at it from a standpoint of retooling, re-education. We have to afford the ability for everyone to be able to get into education and then job training that they can then carry over into their career force. And that shouldn't be limited to only our returning veterans, but that should be open to people who've already finished one career and maybe want to start a second career. Frankly, I don't think 50 is old anymore. I don't think 70 is old anymore. I mean, we're living longer and we're living healthier. It's a wonderful thing. But I think this all starts from tax reform. We have to disincentivize American companies moving American jobs overseas. And we need a fair and equitable tax code. And when we talk about compromise, that doesn't mean that we compromise on the backs of the most vulnerable. Look, we know that our Department of Defense, that the majority of our recruits come from the bottom 10% and serve our country. If we can ask the bottom 10% in our country to serve and pay for our national security in red blood, then we can ask the top 1% to pay for it in green cash. And so the way we fix our national deficit, the way we realistically look at the problems facing our country is we remove the FICA cap and we expose capital gains to FICA taxes. There's no reason why money earned from hard work should be taxed differently than money earned from money.
Mr. Bailey?
Thank you. I believe that while this House of Representatives seat is a national office, that I promise you that would be a staunch partisan for the 6th District. Now, I'll answer your question regarding the 6th District. This district has been neglected for a generation economically. I think that my vision of this district-wide industrial development will increase the number of technological jobs. That's using your brains, not your hands and arms and muscles. Any age can do it. It's going to be a matter of retraining for a new era. I believe your question was for people over 50. I think people over 50 would find a new life in a new technology as new age workers through the community colleges. It's time to take emergency action and rebuild the middle class in the 6th District, including those over 50.
Mr. Delaney?
As someone who's created over 1,000 jobs here in Maryland, this is obviously an issue close to my heart. I think we have to think about the job creation issue in this country in light of the type of workers we have. So we have 3 basic types of workers right now in this country. We have knowledge workers, workers who are very well educated, and to help those workers grow, and they've been growing, we need comprehensive immigration reform in this country, and we need to continue to invest in our education sector. Second category is manufacturing workers. To really get our manufacturing sector back on track, we need comprehensive energy policy, because that's one of the huge areas of job creation opportunities in this country is around energy. And we need to invest in our infrastructure, and I'll come back to that point. And then the third category of workers in this country are service workers, and they're growing at a very fast rate. And we have to acknowledge that service workers will always be part of this economy, and what we have to do is focus on their rights and start moving up their standard of living through minimum wage adjustments and employee and labor rights. Those are the 3 categories of workers, and we need a plan for each of those to stay competitive. But I think infrastructure is one of the most important things for us to invest in, and it'll create jobs in the short term and in the long term. There's more cash on the balance sheets of U.S. corporations than there's ever been, and there's more cash on the balance sheets of banks than there's ever been. And President Obama has proposed an infrastructure bank, which is a public-private partnership that will allow this country to rebuild its transportation, energy, and communications infrastructure. It'll be done in a way where the government has firm control, because it has to, because it is our infrastructure, and decides how and with what kind of workers the infrastructure will be built with. But it'll leverage all the private capital that exists, that wants to invest in infrastructure, and will put an enormous number of people to work in the short term, and will lay the groundwork for the industries that will help all three of those employee sectors.
Senator.
Thank you. I think it's amazing that the last president, President Bush, and the Republican-controlled Congress in 2000 inherited surpluses as far as the eye can see. And with 6 years of control of the House of Representatives under the Bush administration, they got us into 2 wars and provided tax cuts for the top 1% that ended up leading to deficit spending that we have today. And now they've had, under this president, under President Obama, it's like a sudden epiphany that the deficit's got to be the #1 issue. And I think one thing I would say about Democrats is we've allowed the Republicans to reframe the debate. We've allowed them to frame the debate as a debate about the deficit, as opposed to framing the debate about how we're going to grow our economy and create jobs. We want to reduce the deficit. Let's repeal the Bush tax cuts for the very affluent. Let's follow President Obama's lead in pulling out of Afghanistan, and let's invest in jobs and people. The president's put forward a jobs bill to make investments in roads, bridges, and transit. Well, the Republicans don't want to move that forward. Instead, they want to cut transportation funding. The president's put forward legislation to invest in our teachers, our firefighters, our police. 3 organizations that have endorsed my candidacy for Congress: firefighters, police, and the teachers. We need to make those investments. Those investments bear long-term dividends, whether it's on our infrastructure or whether it's in our human capital. We need to make those investments, and as a member of Congress, you can bet that I'm going to work with the president to move that kind of legislation forward.
Moving on to our next question, we're going to start with Dr. Puran, and very simple question.
Thank
With a
God.
very complicated answer. What should Congress do about Afghanistan and Iran?
So Afghanistan and Iran. I'll start with Afghanistan. We've committed ourselves to this war for the last 12 years. We've taken care of al-Qaeda. There's a plan on the table for our withdrawal, and this needs to happen within a timely fashion. We need to make sure that we don't leave a void or a vacuum where there's no government, there's no infrastructure for a civil war. We've invested too much for that to happen now. I think the president's timeline is appropriate. And look, I just came back this January from a tour where I was transporting critically wounded soldiers back home from Afghanistan. We're still losing veterans. I mean, we're still creating veterans who are wounded and injured, triple amputees. This war is taking a human toll, and it does need to stop. With respect to Iran, and this is a much broader topic, but I'll be very quick about it. We need to get rid of this regime. Everything that goes on around Iran is the suffocating smoke that is the regime, that is the fire of the regime. They are disrespectful to their own people. I frankly don't trust them with a slingshot, much less nuclear technology. And at this point in time, a military attack from the United States would be ineffective. It would not achieve our goals of removing the regime. If anything, it would harden their position in that country. But I think the president's plan with the sanctions that are currently in place and the European Union oil sanctions are taking a huge toll, and we need to make sure that we continue enforcing these oil sanctions on them.
Mr. Bailey.
Thank you. I think we need to bring all our men and women home from Afghanistan along the president's plan. Young lives and $2 billion a month are too much to expend building an economy on the other side of the world when we need to build the economy in the 6th district. On Iran, I think that the president's multilateral talks with, I think, 6 different nations in the region and sanctions should be given time. And I believe that while it wouldn't be prudent to say that no option is off the table, I would be disinclined to put boots on the ground. Even if Israel made a first strike, our ally would then be in danger and would require us to help them. I would prefer to keep the boots off the ground and rely solely on our high technology, these unmanned drones, and work on their accuracy. But no boots on the ground in Iran. Thank you.
So I think the president is handling both these situations very well. In terms of Afghanistan, I think the scheduled withdrawal the end of 2014 is appropriate. And I certainly don't have access to information or any evidence to suggest that that is the wrong time frame. So I support the president's view on that. And interesting, as you listen to his dialogue around this issue, particularly when the Prime Minister was here recently. You start hearing discussions about no more active engagement after 2013. So I think things are moving in the right direction, but I generally support that time frame. As far as Iran is concerned, I also think the President has handled this very well. I think he's made it clear that containment is not an option, which I think is the important position, the important kind of statement to make. And he's made it clear that every option is on the table. But he's also made it very, very clear that he wants devastating sanctions to take their toll, and there's lots of evidence to suggest that they're working, and we're ramping them up, and he wants to keep political pressure on the process and keep sanctions going, which is the right approach. I also think the President's done a really nice job framing this issue, both in the context of our very important ally in the Middle East, obviously, Israel, but he's also framed this to the larger world. And I think that's a very good way to discuss the situation in Iran. And the President has made it very clear that if Iran has these capabilities, then every country in the region will want these capabilities, and that's a horrific scenario for the world. So he's framed this well around Israel, but he's also framed it well to the larger international community, and I think he's done a very nice job with this issue. And it's a very tough issue, obviously.
Rob.
Thank you. I also support the President's position on the troop drawdown in Afghanistan. But I think just as important, we all rally, many rally around the flag when sending our troops overseas. As a former Army airborne soldier in the U.S. Army Reserve, we also need to make sure that we're looking out for those returning veterans. And I've done a number of things in the Maryland legislature, created a Veterans Caucus, and made investments at the state level in behavioral health for these returning veterans. We need to do more at the federal level to make sure that our returning veterans are getting the health care they need, the services they need, and I'm gonna fight to do just that. I understand the sacrifice that they've made. With respect to Iran, I think that we need to pursue the sanctions. More countries are getting involved with that. But I also think more importantly, our reliance on foreign oil has been the seeds of the trouble that we have in the Middle East. We need to find a way to become energy independent where we're not relying on foreign oil. We need, and we can do that. There's a number of things that I've done as a Maryland state senator in Maryland to move us more to a green economy and green energy. We can do that at the federal level as well, and I'd like to do that as a member of Congress. We also need to continue with multilateral diplomacy with respect to Iran, but like the President, I think all options need to be on the table, including a military option. But I would not support a whole-scale invasion like was done with Iraq under false pretenses. I think that would be the wrong way to go, and I would not support that.
Mr. Little.
I think the last thing you'll get any one of us to do as your future congressman is to suggest that the President's wrong with his current plans with Afghanistan. The last thing I want to do is go to Congress with a target on my back. But I do support the President's drawdown proposal. Again, it's hard to make a judgment when you don't have access to all of the information. But what I will say is that as Americans, we understand our responsibility to help stand up democracy around the world. And that's very admirable. But we need to make sure that we're not losing sight of our own democracy here at home, that we have problems that need to be addressed here in the United States. And while it's admirable that we're doing what we can to protect and preserve and advance democracy around the world, that we don't neglect those here at home that need our attention as well. So I'd like to see us spend more time focusing on building jobs and infrastructure here. And when we bring our troops home, that's an immediate realization of costs. I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars will be realized almost immediately with these troop withdrawals and drawdowns. With regards to Iran, if they want nuclear technology and they're using it as an alternative fuel source, I'm happy with them. Because based on current fuel prices, I'm sure that they're probably tired of it as well. But as a nuclear option, they can't have this capability. And I'm not going to draw a line in the sand and say, if they start a launch sequence, then we bomb preemptively. I think we need to be conscientious that lives are in jeopardy and that any efforts that we make are going to put more lives at stake.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next question. And if I could have some of the questions from the audience over here, so maybe I can coordinate with the two questions we have left. We're going to start with Mr. Bailey again. It's a big difference with 5 candidates and 8 candidates. We're going a lot quicker, and I must say The applause line for this group is very different from the applause line for the last group.
What was the last group like?
On energy, gasoline prices are now over $4 per gallon. What should Congress be doing about federal energy policy?
My view is that the fossil fuels are the way of the past. We rely on them wholly now, a very small percentage towards alternative fuels now. Federal policy should firm up what we have now, rely more on domestic production, responsibly, safely, and respecting the environment. But the front edge of federal policy must be developing these new technologies and reaching out to new unforeseen technologies by developing STEM buildings in our community colleges, by relying on science, technology, engineering, and math programs, and coupling business need with graduate student study and private money investments. It's been done. It's called the Stanford model, where private investment looking for new technologies to invest in would come to the university, Stanford University, and private industry would go to the engineering department at Stanford University looking for answers to their daily problems that they run into in manufacturing. The Stanford model allowed the university to be the hub, the catalyst for this development, and we know today as Silicon Valley. I think we could do a plan here in the 6th district naturally with the balance of the high-tech industry in the east and the potential for a state-of-the-art manufacturing base in the west of the district, and move forward to rely less on fossil fuels and mainly rely less on foreign nations.
Mr. Delaney.
Thank you. One of the things I've talked about from the beginning of my campaign is the importance of having a national energy policy in this country, and the kind of policy that the whole country gets behind and there's a grand vision for, because this is one of the most important issues facing our future as it relates to employment, the environment, and national security. And the energy policy should have two components to it. First, it should appropriately price and cost for all of our different sources of energy, because we do not do that right now. We don't include the cost of keeping the shipping lanes open in the Middle East when we talk about oil. We don't include healthcare costs when we talk about coal. So we should have a carbon tax. We should have from the production side of energy, we should level the playing field so that the free market allows renewable sources of energy and alternative sources of energy to move us to a place of energy independence, right, and improve our environment. But as important to the focus on the production side of energy, we have to focus on conservation and efficiency. Because regardless of the production, if we become more efficient as a country around how we use energy and how we store energy, not only does it create an enormous business opportunity for this country to be a leader in advanced energy and energy technology, but it fundamentally changes the equation on the production side, which is why we need to renew the production tax credit. We need to bring back the manufacturing tax credit. We need to focus on storage. They say that if we can save all the energy lost on our grid for one night, it'll power all the cars in the country for 1 year. Those are the kind of opportunities that exist on the conservation and efficiency side, and they're huge business opportunities, and they make the production equation much easier.
Senator.
In the Maryland Senate, I've actually been a leader on renewable and alternative energy, and have gotten numerous recognitions and awards for my efforts in promoting solar energy, wind energy, and other types of alternative energy. We need to do those things in Congress. Let me tell you something. In 10 years, we sent a man to the moon. I think in 10 years, we can transform our auto industry. And we're doing some of those things in the state of Maryland, but we really need to take it to the federal level. You've got automobiles in other countries that are getting fuel efficiency 50 miles a gallon. We need to do that here. There are incentives that we've created in the state of Maryland with legislation that I've authored to invest and promote biofuels. We can do that at the federal level. We can make those investments. Algae can be used as fuel. If we made some investment to bring that out in a bigger scale, get economies of scale for that, that could be the fuel of the future. Also, investment in electric cars. There's a number of things that we're doing, again, in the state of Maryland on that front. We can be doing those things at the federal level. And as a member of Congress, I'd like to do those things. I'd like to have the opportunity to do those things. We can be a leader with the auto industry with a more efficient car or a car that doesn't rely on gasoline. That's why the United Auto Workers has endorsed me. That's why the League of Conservation Voters has endorsed me, the Sierra Club, and the Green Democrats, because we can be leaders in green and renewable energy and also be leaders in job creation for our auto industry.
I think we need to examine, our comprehensive energy policy from two different perspectives. One, unlimited resources versus very limited resources. We've seen enough in this country where we understand that the cost of oil is going up because maybe supply and availability is going to go down. These things are going to disappear at some point, and we need to make sure that we're prepared to step in with something that's going to allow us to sustain ourselves. That means making investments in research and technology. That means making sure that the BP solar plant that's now empty in Frederick has an occupant. That doesn't mean that we have to, trip over ourselves, funding large, unexplainable amounts of technology to do this. That means we find partners around the world. Japan is a perfect example. They had their problems with nuclear energy, and as a result have now turned attention to solar technology. That solar technology in partnership created a business opportunity in Ohio, where Ohio will be providing solar panels to Japan, almost on the other side of the world. That's an opportunity for us here in the 6th District. We have a facility capable of producing those same solar panels. That means we can produce parts. That means jobs. We really need to focus on our innovation. And we do it by providing funds to those that are interested in standing up new ways for us to provide for ourselves from an energy standpoint. Wind turbines. Wind is unlimited, so is the sun.
Dr. Perron?
So I'm going to hazard a guess here that the Republican applause line was drill, baby, drill, right? They have no creativity. So when I look at energy, I also look at environment. Things like Fukushima and 3 Mile Island and the BP oil spill were not supposed to happen. That was a failure of our current energy system. And it shows you how fragile our energy system is currently. A despot in the Middle East decides that he wants to bring harm to his own citizens, our oil prices go up. And so what we need to understand is that we need to have a very broad and diverse approach to our energy procurement in this country. The sad truth is that we are going to be dependent on fossil fuels for the foreseeable future. But we went into World War II shooting Springfield rifles, and most of the cavalry was still riding on horseback. We came out of World War II with B-29s and the atomic bomb. So when this country decides that it needs to invest in a worthy cause, where we start doesn't mean we can't get to somewhere better very quickly. And we do need to invest. We need to invest heavily in research and development, because the next energy revolution, the next revolution is going to be an energy revolution. And the country that owns that energy revolution will lead for the next century. Eisenhower after World War II doubled down on education infrastructure because he realized that's what would make America be prosperous and win the next 50 years. We need to double down on our energy. We need to invest in our research labs, and we need to find the next energy source so that we can ultimately get energy independence and lead the world for the next 100 years.
Next question is about immigration. There are an estimated 12 million people in this country illegally. It's estimated about a third of them actually entered the country legally, but then their visas expired. What should Congress do about illegal immigrants? And we're going to start with Mr. Delaney.
So I believe we need comprehensive immigration reform, and there should be 3 components to that. First, we need to recognize that we have these 12 to 13 million illegal immigrants in our country, and we need to find a path for citizenship for them. It's the right thing to do for them from a human rights perspective. And it's the right thing to do for the rest of the citizens of this country, to make them more engaged in society, to make them contribute greater to revenues and they're already part of our economic world. We need to make sure they're fully part of our economic world and embracing everything that goes with that. So it's good for them, it's fundamental for them right? And it's good for us. So that's the first thing we need to do. The second thing we need to do once we do that is really do deal with our borders, because there are certain states in this country in particular that have a very, very difficult time with the borders, and we want to make sure we don't find ourselves in the position we are now with another 10 or 20 10 to 20 million illegal immigrants. So you want to deal with the ones that are here now in the lens that I laid out, and then you want to focus on our borders. But then the third thing we have to do is we really have to focus on making sure the most educated and skilled immigrants who want to come here and want to stay here after they receive a top-notch education, particularly in math and science, or want to come here and start businesses, that they can come here. Because right now as a country, we have situations where we have very porous borders, we have lots of illegal immigrants that don't have a path to citizenship, and then we make it very difficult for the best and the brightest to come to this country. So it's one of the most important things we can do. Increase the number of visas that are available for people with skills, create visa opportunity for entrepreneurs, allow people to come here and study at our top universities to stay here after they graduate. All of this should be part of comprehensive immigration reform. It's the just and fair thing to do, and it's the right thing to do for our economy.
Not to tout a Republican president, but during President Reagan's second term, Democrats and Republicans actually worked together and moved forward comprehensive immigration reform. And I find it very unfortunate that Republicans in Congress now demonize the issue and use the issue to be divisive in America, rather than trying to come up with solutions on how to deal with immigration. I've actually, in the Maryland Senate, been a proponent of the DREAM Act. And the DREAM Act would allow those undocumented students that are in schools with my children. I've got 3 children in the public schools here in Germantown. They're attending school side by side with them, trying to have a better life for themselves. They didn't make a choice to come here. Their parents did, though, and they came here because they wanted a better life. And if they're doing well in school and they want to be able to attend a community college with in-state tuition, well, that's something I'm supportive of. I'm supportive of helping people do better in society. That's what they want to do, and we need to provide opportunities. I would say the one regret in being a state senator with respect to that legislation is that I couldn't, at the state level, use it as a path for citizenship. But as a member of Congress, you can bet that I would support similar legislation. So those students that want to pursue a higher education and get in-state tuition and succeed and do well and get good grades, well, that should be a path to citizenship. We need to provide opportunities for people. We've got 12 million immigrants, undocumented immigrants in this country, many of which came here because they wanted a better life. Well, for those that came here because they wanted a better life, they want a job, they want to work, well, they're part of our society right now. If they want to be here, we need to create a path to citizenship for them as well. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the American dream is a global dream, and it's a dream for everyone, and that's what draws people to this country. And we should welcome these people with open arms. This country was founded by immigrants. None of us that are here were originally here before. I mean, our Statue of Liberty welcomes everyone with open arms, and I think we need to take this approach when we consider what our comprehensive immigration policy is going to be. That means expediting a path to citizenship to those that deserve to be here. That means making sure that those that are here that are not contributing get an expedited path out of here. It also means that as a country, we fight any effort to make an amendment to our Constitution eliminating the birthright of those that come here and have children born here even though they're not documented. We need to make sure that whatever we decide to do is comprehensive, that it's clear and it's efficient, and that those that are in hiding now feel comfortable coming out and making themselves known so that they can contribute to the best of their abilities. Thank you.
Dr. Perron.
So I think this is an issue that hits very close to me. So my wife can trace back her descendants to the Mayflower. My family and I immigrated here, and we've walked a path to citizenship. And it's not an easy path. There's no free lunches. Every step of the way, we've had to prove our love and dedication to this country, work hard, live honest, service, and it's worth it. And for me, this is a form of service back to my country, running for Congress. And so when we look at the issue of immigration, it's a human issue, and it's a humane issue. We don't put walls around this great nation so that our citizens can't leave. People come here for the opportunities that exist here. But we can't exploit the undocumented aliens who are here. Currently, the employees will hire them at a fifth of the basic salaries that we would pay for minimum wage. They hire them without affording them the benefits of safety, basic safety things that our unions have fought so hard for: hearing protection, head protection, eye protection. And that then creates an unfair work environment where employers will hire undocumented workers because they're cheaper. And then there's resentment among those who would want those jobs. And so we have to have a path where we document these undocumented workers, allow them to enter the workforce at the same level as everyone else, create a competitive environment, and treat them fairly, treat them like human beings, and make sure that we protect our communities at the same time. Thank you.
Mr. Bailey?
Thank you. I think it's important that when we start knocking around phrases like comprehensive immigration reform, opening up that can of worms in Congress, we should remember that these 12 to 20 million people are good folks. They come here to chase the dream that we all chase, even if we're born here. That's advancement economically, safely, raising your family, all the things that we count on as Americans that they can't count on at home. And I should point out that these are good folks. In my 5 years as a felony jury trial lawyer with the Public Defender's Office in Hagerstown, I have never had a Mexican client. These are good-working, hard-working, God-loving people, and I would be proud to call them neighbors, and we need to give them a path to citizenship.
Okay, moving on to an interesting question from the audience. We'll start with Senator Gradiola. What is your opinion of the current reduction of the payroll tax on Social Security? Has it helped the economy? Should it stay in place? Likely have to vote for it.
I think in the short term, if we were to allow that to sunset, which was what was discussed last year, and they extended it to February, and now they've extended it to the end of this year, that I think it's clear from economists on the right and the left that would have had a negative impact on the economy. I think the question that comes up next year, what we do, is going to depend for me on where the economy is. I mean, if we're on solid footing as an economy and we're growing our jobs base, unemployment is going down, and we don't have to worry about a double-dip recession, then I think at that point in time, we allow the payroll tax to go back to what it was. We need those dollars to fund the Social Security system. But if the economy is still on shaky footing, which I think is where it is today, and there's still a risk that we could have a double-dip recession, getting that money into people's pockets, I think, is an important thing for this economy, and I would support continuing it potentially for another year.
Mr. Little?
I'd like to be a prognosticator and say that, a year from now, I'll know exactly what I'm going to do, and I don't. I do believe that it's the right move for today because of where the economy is. And I'd like to think that based on where the economy is, that we'll sit down and we'll reevaluate. But I'd also like to think that our first year in Congress means that we've restructured the tax code and that we're regaining dollars from other places so that we don't have to rely on an uncertainty that so many people rely on most immediately. So I can't tell you exactly what I would do, so many different factors, but right now, allowing it to sunset will be the best idea, and then we'll revisit it depending on where our economy is next year.
I can tell you from a personal experience, I'm an independent contractor, so I'm an S corporation, an army of one, so to speak. I've very much enjoyed these last 2 years having to pay less taxes. Sure, I'm sure that an individual, especially in the middle class, that it's been worthwhile for us. The simple fact remains that this was important for the middle class because, again, for the last 12 years, for the last 10 years, we've had the Bush tax cuts. And they've been helping out the wealthiest become richer, while 50 million people have fallen out of the roles of the middle class. So this tax cut helped the middle class. It was critical during the downturn of the economy to make sure that more money stayed in the pockets of the middle class. I still very much believe that in the long run, we have to remove the FICA cap on all income, and that includes then exposing capital gains to the same FICA cap. And that's the way we fix Social Security.
Yes, thank you. I agree. Remove the salary cap on the FICA tax. Will fund Social Security forever. But the question was the payroll tax across the board. Right now, we need it, and I think that a year from now we should revisit the issue, but I would be in favor of a progressive lapsing of the payroll tax cut, perhaps favoring those who need the break the most. And I talked with one of my conservative friends. I have some, you know. He's a circuit court judge in West Virginia. And he said, well, if you're going to raise the salary cap on the FICA tax, I'm going to want more than what everybody else gets at retirement age. Well, that makes sense because he would probably take that 3-point-something% and invest it in a interest-bearing account. So he's thinking of his bottom line. Stays up late at night thinking of money schemes like most Republicans. But I'm thinking that, well, that was the beginning of a conversation. I mean, that was possibly two sides bargaining about the outcome of an idea. Watch out, but I think that's what Congress is supposed to do. And I think there's a lot of room for developing these ideas as we go along, especially within this year for the payroll tax.
Yeah, so I think this is an issue that most of us are in agreement with respect to. We have to see where things are in a year to determine what to do with it next year. And I think the other thing we should be talking about is, in general, how the president's stimulus approach has worked, actually. And we're seeing lots of data to suggest that the investment that the president made in our economy has turned out to be the right investment to make. And this is, I think, another example of it. But we should remind ourselves that there are some very significant issues we still have to deal with as a country. We have not reformed our housing finance situation in this country. Fannie and Freddie still make 98% of the mortgages in this country, and we still have a housing crisis. There are very significant headwinds we have to deal with in the long term, which is why it's important to get focused on putting the policies in place that it will get our economy on the right track. And I define getting our economy on the right track by investing in the industries and the businesses of the future, which means we'll have to make investments in education, which means we'll have to make investment in our infrastructure, which means we'll have to make investments in getting a comprehensive energy policy in place and creating the incentives to allow that to happen. There's plenty of data to suggest that making these kind of investments, just like making the stimulus investment that we made as a country, pays off. But it just has to be done in a larger framework and without this piecemeal approach that we're often forced into these days.
So for Mr. Little, starting with Mr. Little, would you be in favor of the constitutional amendment? It says it's being sponsored by Senator Brown. I don't know whether that's true or not, but to overturn the Citizens United decision and restore campaign finance limitations. Citizens United is the Supreme Court decision that has allowed for these super PACs during this campaign season.
I'm sorry, I'd be remiss to not put this in the framework of this campaign here. I think the Supreme Court made a big mistake. I think the concept of democracy in America is controlled by the people, of the people, for the people, by the people. Not of the corporation, by the corporation, or for the biggest corporation. And to the extent that we allow corporate interests to control who bankrolls our congresspeople and our senators and our presidents and what they present as the best course of action for the American people, we do ourselves a great disservice. This country was built on the ideology of millions and millions of people coming together to determine what was going to be best for us. We've ceded control with the Supreme Court's support. We've ceded control of our destiny to those who have amassed the greatest wealth. They control the message we receive. They control the policy that's put forth. They control the people who are supposed to be representing us. The Supreme Court has failed us miserably. and I would fight vehemently to overturn that decision. It was deplorable, and as an attorney, I'm ashamed.
This goes to a broader issue where our government continues to cede vast powers to corporations while treating its citizens as inconsequential. We see this with the big corporations in farming, where now they're getting the majority of the subsidies that were meant for smaller farms, to encourage small farming in Frederick County and Western Montgomery County and the parts of the 6th District. And certainly the Supreme Court ruling, I think, was one of the worst rulings, and we'll look back, was one of the worst rulings in their history, where we treat corporations now as human beings. Frankly, it's corrupted an already corrupt campaign finance system, and as a member of Congress, I would work very hard to help in any way, shape, or form overturn the Supreme Court ruling, which I think would be difficult short of an amendment, but certainly to enact other laws that would then start to make up for the things within the original law that were lost because of the ruling.
Yes, I would support an amendment to the Constitution that says that corporations are not citizens, and another amendment to say that women are.
Yeah, I think this is one of those issues where you won't get much disagreement from this panel. I would support efforts to overturn that. I think this is a very, very significant issue that we're actually only in the early innings of seeing it play out. I think Republican interest in super PACs now amount to almost $500 million, which is 4 times President Clinton's budget the last time he ran for president. Just to put that number into perspective, his entire budget, they already raised 4 times that amount. So this is a very, very significant issue that'll have a profound effect on the future of American politics. One of the things I've talked about extensively on this campaign is my platform, which I call the 5 E's. One of the E's is ethics. And I've proposed several specific reforms, including term limits, including comprehensive redistricting reform, including limitations on members of Congress's ability to go into lobbying, which is currently 1 year, and extending that to 5 years. Because what we fundamentally have to do, in addition to dealing with this one specific problem that we have, which was the point of the question, but what we have to do is change the motivation of why people are in government. Because right now, it seems to me, when people are in Congress, they make decisions for one of 3 reasons. Either because in their heart they think it's the right thing to do, or they make it because they're trying to get reelected, or they make it because they're trying to climb up in some power game within their party. And what we have to do as a country is we have to get more people in the first category. We have to get more people making decisions for the right reasons, based on objective measurements. And the American people have to own this problem, because this is fundamentally a problem with how we elect our political officials and how independent-minded they are. And unless the American people actually take control of this problem through the voting booth, right? Because no matter how much money is spent, there's still the ability to make changes. And I look at the voter turnout that occurs in these primaries, and it really is surprisingly low. And almost as a country, whatever we could do, whatever investment we have to make to increase dramatically turnout in primaries, that'll pencil out in terms of a good return to the American people. So I think we have to focus on that and some of the comprehensive reforms I've proposed, as well as turning back this unfortunate decision.
I think we absolutely need to do everything we can to overturn that decision. We saw on the Eastern Shore, we had a Democrat, Frank Cradaville, who was serving in Congress for 2 years. And the amount of money that came into that race from corporations, from Karl Rove, 527 PACs, and other outside influence was dramatic in what happened in that race. And we've seen it play out in other races across the country. You have the oil companies basically putting out a name, Organization for the Environment, and using money, unlimited amounts of money, to attack Democrats who are fighting for the environment. And there's no transparency in that whatsoever. We need to have greater transparency in who's funding these super PACs, what businesses are behind them. It needs to be done in real time as well. So yes, absolutely overturn. Citizens United would work with Senator Sherrod Brown on that, and the House of Representatives to do that. And we also need greater transparency when it comes to public finance or campaign finance.
Okay, we seem to be moving on at a good clip. If there are any more questions from the floor, I'm going to change the rules here at the end. The Republicans asked for concluding statements. we have enough time. I know this is going to be a great surprise to you. You're going to have difficulty come up with a concluding statement, but that'll be in about half an hour. We still have a number of questions, and we're going to start this one with Dr. Perron.
I want another easy one.
Huh?
I want another easy one, please.
What? I'm just going to read this as written. What do you think of the use of drones to kill people in countries that we are not formally at war with?
So, as a military officer, I've actually studied this recently in terms of our use of drones. Most particularly, we've used drones in Pakistan, which, by all regards, I guess is still an ally. The issue remains that when we have enemies that we've identified as enemies of the state, what is our legal and international authority to go after those individuals, even if it is entering the sovereign zones of another country? And I think that the United States and the DoD has been very clear that when we identify someone as being an enemy to our state and our nation, that we reserve the right to pursue them in whatever country is harboring them. And I fully accept that, and I think that's something we should continue. That process is something we should continue. The drones have had significant effects in our efforts in diminishing Al-Qaeda's effectiveness. We use drones in South and Central America more for recon and intelligence against the drug cartels and the multinational cartels. It truly is an effective advantage for the United States military. And when we're dealing with soft targets, this doesn't work for hard targets. When we're dealing with soft targets, the drones do keep boots off the ground and they do protect the lives of Americans.
Mr. Bailey.
I agree. I believe that the drones technology is something that should be developed. I'm very concerned, however, about their level of accuracy and perhaps overuse. We tend to pour a lot of munitions on a problem, a lot more than may be necessary to take care of the problem, and there's a lot of civilian casualties that I'm not comfortable with. But yes, I think the drones in territories upon which we have not formally declared war is a necessary policy, and I would promote it. But I would definitely be very concerned about the accuracy and overuse of these drones.
So this is obviously a very tricky issue because we all understand the benefits of drones, which is it saves American lives. And to the extent we can have engagements, particularly military engagements that we're required to have based on our national security interests, et cetera, fighting those fights or waging those fights with unmanned drones obviously is a benefit in that it saves American lives and it's a benefit to the American soldiers. However, we have to be careful about respecting civil liberties, right? And drones do feel like the potential for the slippery slope, which is that, where will drones be in 10 or 15 years? Our capabilities are so outpacing everyone else in the world that we have to just remember, because we've seen examples, particularly under the Bush administration, where I think as Americans things happen that we weren't proud of. And we have to remember one day there will be a headline in this country where we do something with drones, and it's something that's really a dark day for how we feel about ourselves as Americans. So we have to be very careful with this issue.
I think we need to be very balanced in our approach. Obviously, if it's not putting American lives at risk, that's certainly a good thing. But we also need to be careful in what engagements that we're using drones in. Depending on the administration, we could see ourselves in a situation where they are overutilized. I think if they're going to be used, and it's hard to say, here's the bright line for that. It's somewhat a case-by-case basis. Certainly the Congress needs to be informed, the Intelligence Committee, the Foreign Relations Committee as well. There needs to be an ongoing dialogue, especially as this technology continues to develop. So certainly benefit in that you're less likely to put troops' lives in danger, but we need to be careful in how we deploy them and and under what circumstances we deploy them. So I just feel that we need to be cautious in what circumstances we use those in.
Mr. Little.
I think drones are fantastic. They're great for recon, and they're great for keeping our soldiers safe. but we need to make sure that the United States absolves itself of this sense that we're at war with everyone that disagrees with us. They're great for single, isolated targets. Osama bin Laden, perfect target for a drone. These are the kinds of things that they should be used for, but to the extent that we use them where we haven't declared war, really is a tricky situation for us. It's a military engagement on our behalf that's been characterized as a non-military engagement to the public. Either we're at war or we're not, or we classify them as what they are. Single, isolated targets, and this is the best way for us to rectify that particular situation. But from a policy standpoint, we really need to focus on making sure that if we are using them actively, that is why, after we have already declared war or have engaged in war with a different country.
Okay, Mr. Bailey. Again, I'm going to read this question exactly as written, so you can make your own interpretation about where they're coming from. What do you think is a greater threat to the United States? Iran's nuclear program or Mexican drug cartels and a collapsing Mexican government?
A collapsing Mexican government is much closer, and the geography can't be ignored. Iran is on the other side of the world. I've talked to people who are much more knowledgeable on the subject, and the consensus seems to be that it's a small nation. We seem to have it out of disproportion in our minds how strong they are, but absent the nuclear threat. But as far as the drug cartels and the collapsing Mexican government, I think that is a very dangerous situation right on our border. It's a tough question, but I think I'd have to say Mexico. More dangerous.
Mr. Delane.
It's a very good and interesting question that I actually won't answer because I think they're both very significant threats, and it's hard to put it in context about which one is more important than the other. I mean, obviously the situation in Iran, if Iran were to have nuclear capabilities, we all know where that leads. That leads to every country in the Middle East having nuclear capabilities, and it further destabilizes one of the least stable regions in the world, and the consequences of that are potentially horrific. On the same note, I mean, Mexico is a large and important country that's right on our border. The collapse of the Mexican government would obviously have, very significant consequences for us. I mean, one, they just present so differently. One destabilizes the whole world, right? The other destabilizes the United States. They're both obviously terrible scenarios to imagine. It underscores, to my mind, how tricky our foreign policy is as a country, and it also underscores, to my mind, what a very nice job the President has done and the Secretary of State has done in managing our portfolio of international engagements. And I think as a country, directionally we're heading in the right way in terms of improving our image around the world and engaging with countries from a positive and constructive perspective. And I think these two scenarios, which, God willing, neither of them will play out, present very different circumstances.
Senator.
Thank you. I don't think we can choose one or the other. If Iran develops nuclear weapons, that's a big problem. That's a big concern that we have to have. Obviously, the drug cartels is a huge problem as well because they're providing drugs that many of our country's children are taking and creating crime and other problems in this country. The United States, we've got to be looking at the world in a multifaceted way. We've got to deal with the drug cartels. We've got to deal with Iran. We've got to deal with North Korea. We've got to deal with China and its devaluing of their currency to create trade imbalances. It's a complicated world. There are a lot of things going on out there. In the United States, we need to be vigilant on all these fronts.
I'm going to go out on a limb and answer the question as it stands today. So today, the destabilization of the Mexican government is a greater threat to the United States. We can talk about what Iran might do 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road, but we won't be able to realize those problems until then. Right now, we have very real, very identifiable problems that are the direct result of what's going on in Mexico. Drug proliferation is destroying our youth. It causes us to have extra medical costs. It causes us to have increased violence, not just at the border, but in the inner city where these drug warlords are fighting for territory and destroying families and people's livelihoods. So today, Mexico and the destabilization of that government as a result of the drug cartels is our greatest problem.
I've served this country in either in military uniform or through public health in over 30 countries. And so I'm uniquely qualified of all the candidates here, I believe, to talk about international issues. And I think this question is such an astute question, and I love the fact that Democrats think this way. So when you look at the issue of the Mexican drug cartels versus Iran, you're comparing apples and oranges. You're comparing a state actor in Iran, and then you're comparing it to a multinational cartel, just like Al-Qaeda. So if I pose it to you like that, can we deal with states easier, or can we deal with the multinational cartels easier? I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to deal with states because there are means, such as the UN, there are means through negotiations, diplomacy, that are not available with the multinational cartels. So the strategic approach to the two are completely different. The drug cartels not only traffic drugs, but they found out that they can traffic human beings and make a lot more profit and serve less prison time for it. Human trafficking is a far greater harm to the Mexican economy, to the Central American economy, which, let me tell you, North America directly affects us. Iran's nuclear ambitions are being dealt with in a diplomatic way through engagement with our allies, and it is a critical threat, but it's a completely different threat than what the Mexican cartels pose. It's a day-to-day threat versus a broader long-term strategic threat. It's a great question. They need to be dealt with both. Parallel track, completely different means.
So we should, my mic is going out. Yeah, in any case, no, it goes in and out. I'm just going to stand here. We wouldn't do a Democratic debate without a really green question here. So what ideas, we're going to start with Mr. Delaney on this one. What ideas do you have to promote sustainable development and clean technology, and how would you work to integrate that into our economy?
So it's an environmental question, it's an energy policy question, and it's an employment question. So let's talk about the environmental perspective. I, for one, believe global warming is a very serious issue, and I think there's a reasonable chance we're underestimating the consequences of this. We've lost more species on this planet in the last 20 years than we've ever lost in recorded time. People tend to think about the effect of global warming, and they kind of talk about it the way we talk about our economy. Well, our economy might grow 2 or 3% or 4%, and we kind of know what that means. They talk about how much the planet will warm in the same context with some degree of confidence that they have some sense as to what the high end of those estimates mean, which I, for one, don't believe anyone has any sense of the consequences of this in terms of what it could mean to destabilizing our planet. And so I think it's a very serious issue, which is why we need a call to action around energy policy, conservation, and efficiency. I think the United States has an enormous opportunity to be a leader in energy. It's the next great industry in the world, right? I think in 25 years to 50 years, how we produce energy and how we use energy will fundamentally change. And I think it is very consistent with all of our love for the natural world to embrace energy policy that moves us to a much higher renewable standards, but also creates a leadership position for the United States in advanced energy. And I think this is the one area left for us to really win in and be an exporter not only of energy, because that potential exists, but obviously an exporter in technology. California is a great example. It's the only state in the country that has a carbon tax. It gets 90% of the private investment in alternative energy. That's not a coincidence. Those investors know there's a level playing field in California. That's why they invest here, and that's what the United States should be doing.
Unlike some of our Republicans in Congress, I actually believe in science. But I think if you look, but I think anyone can just look at the last 3 months. Did we actually have a winner? I mean, really, did we actually have a winner? I mean, global warming is having a toll today, now. We need to do a number of things to address that. As a state senator In Annapolis, I've done a number of things to promote renewable energy, solar energy, wind energy, geothermal energy. We have legislation that we have on the floor dealing with geothermal energy Monday evening. I've got legislation I'm working to get out of committee that the Sierra Club testified in favor of, as well as the Solar Energy Industry Association. They said if we pass this legislation, not only is it good from an environmental perspective, but it's also good in creating up to 10,000 jobs in the state of Maryland. These are things that we need to be doing at the federal level. This Congress is not focused at all on an energy policy. We can find new sources of renewable energy with various incentives. We've done it here in Maryland, both from an environmental perspective and from a jobs perspective. Far too often, people pit the environment and the economy on two separate sides. Well, we've demonstrated in Maryland, with legislation that I've been a champion of, that you can have both. We can have cleaner air, cleaner water, and green jobs, jobs that you can't export overseas. We've got solar installer businesses here in Montgomery County that did not exist 5 years ago. We have some in Garrett County, the other end of the district as well. These are flourishing industries, so we can have it both, but we need to move forward. We need to believe in the science that we're given, and we need to be very aggressive about it, and we need to move very quickly about it, and I'd like to do that as a member of Congress.
I don't think you'll get any argument about whether or not global warming exists. I mean, it does. It's a fact. Icebergs are disappearing. And just the state of the environment is altering every day, not just in ways that we see, but at the micro level. Organisms that flourished before no longer exist. But that also doesn't mean that we can't help the process rejuvenate itself. That means taking responsibility for what we do, responsibility for our carbon footprint. That means making recyclables for multiple purposes, repurposing them to make children's play sets, to make textiles out of unused glass. The old East Alco plant is the perfect example. It's sitting there, it's empty, it's on paved surface. If we repurpose that facility to repurpose recyclables, we could create jobs. And that's how you integrate green tech into the economy. We can also, wind energy. We can use wind energy to provide power for all of these other things that we'd like to do so that we don't have to frack. I'm not an opponent of fracking. I think it's too dangerous for our environment. And I think, again, it falls in line with us using what we know to be limited resources for unlimited purposes. Those things will create jobs. We need those wind turbines, and we can provide parts that will allow people to grow and prosper in this economy. That's how you merge green technology and the economy.
Dr. Perrin.
Thank you. When we talk about green energy, I often wonder if we sometimes use the word green just too loosely and really define what it means to be green energy. So I had the privilege to serve in Antarctica for about 45 days 3 years ago, and I got to work with as a physician taking care of the National Science Foundation folks that are working down there, and they're dealing with climate change. And I got to meet the scientists who had defined the ozone layer and the international efforts that went into then helping reduce fluorocarbons out of our environment so that we could help the ozone layer regenerate. The fact of the matter is that climate change is absolutely real. It is being driven by human forces, and a large part of that is our CO2 emissions and our use of fossil fuels. That's absolutely true. And this goes back to the issues of we need to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. The impacts of global climate change are far greater than not having a winter or having a mild winter. The issues go to economic routes through the North Pole with fishing lanes. It has to do with parts of California and the eastern seaboard being underwater within the next 50 years. So this issue is very real. And as a nation, I don't believe, and I think this is in large part due to the divisiveness of the Republicans, we have not committed ourselves to energy efficiency. So I have a Chevy Volt because, thank you. I've driven about 4,000 miles in the last month through the district, and it's great to have 45 miles a gallon on the car. And simple things such as the Veterans Hospital that I work at, its rooftops are completely white gravel to help with its energy costs. So there are basic simple things that we can do to really make ourselves into a green economy.
I think we're entering an exciting period of time for the 6th District. My ideas about how to integrate new technologies, green technologies, with the innovative research and development concerns here in the East, with state-of-the-art manufacturing in the West, is a way to connect the two. I also have a plan for emergency public works project right away to reopen the C&O Canal from beginning to end. It reaches along the backbone of the 6th District. It would bring thousands of laboring jobs right now. And the workers, the public workers, would be paid not only wages, but in college courses. And by the way, I don't think the Park Service would allow anyone to put an inboard motor on a barge. That's going to be green, pulled by mules. And the workers will be paid in college courses to be trained as new age workers in the new age technologies, or someone in their family. And that way we'd have a strong employment base, physical plant base, as well as the research and development base centered around the colleges, the STEM buildings and the colleges, to reach into the future with good prospects. And I think it's a good connection to make, and it's one to keep in mind as we wean ourselves from fossil fuels over the next 50 years. Thank you.
Okay, this is the last question before the closing statements. We'll start with Senator Garagiola. If elected, what specific ethics reforms would you champion in Congress?
Well, the Congress recently passed the Stock Act to ban insider trading, and that's something I would have certainly supported as well. I also believe that we need to have redistricting reform as well. You know, this is a district actually that a Democrat can win and a Republican can win. For 20 years, it was a district that only a Republican could win. And similarly, there's districts that only Democrats can win. And the people in this district are finally going to have a choice after 20 years of Republican control. Now, we've had some changes, and it was Congressman Van Hollen formerly representing parts of this area, and Congresswoman Edwards. But throughout the country, most of the country, we have very Republican districts and very Democratic districts. And what we have as a result of that is the election is the primary. It's the primary election. So in those Republican districts, you know, it's who can be more farther on the right that ends up winning, because there's no general election challenge. And those in the very safe Democratic districts is who can be more on the left. And it's no wonder that we have hyper-partisanship going on in this Congress. It's no wonder that we have hyper-partisanship. I liken it to, and my son's in 8th grade, I liken it to an 8th grade dance where you have all the girls on one side of the room, all the boys on the other side of the room, and no one coming in the middle. So I think, you know, if we had more districts, frankly, like the current District 6, the new District 6, where a Democrat could win or a Republican could win, that would actually be an important reform for this country to try to get more people talking to each other again across party lines.
This is not one of those, this is a complicated issue. The Stock Act as it exists now lacks teeth. It has loopholes. And I would invite everyone to read it and see the same loopholes that will continue to allow Congress to be duplicitous in what they expect from citizens versus what they expect for themselves. That also means the return of Glass-Steagall, because as I noted earlier, it's not the people that control our Congress, it's corporations. Corporations that are allowed to do and say whatever they want because they have control of the people that make the rules. So as your congressman, our rules would be simple. Same rules that we apply in elementary school classrooms. You cannot, under any circumstances, because we don't need a 10-page document that tells us what's appropriate and what's not. We overcomplicate things in an effort to make things confusing and to provide a way for us to double talk our way out of what we're not supposed to be doing. This is not a complicated issue, people. And I'm sorry, if you wanted to applaud, and I'm rambling, I'm sorry, but this is something that's it's very critical because it reflects the nature of the people of this country. We have laws that as citizens we abide by every single day. And our leadership feels like they don't have to because they're the leadership. And the people need to stand up and say, this is not appropriate, and this is how we address the problem.
So 17 years ago, Congress passed the Congressional Accountability Act, which basically says that Congress falls under the same laws that it passes for every other citizen, like the Americans with Disabilities Act, et cetera, et cetera. I'm kind of disappointed that the Senate was not able to pass its version of the Stock Act through the House. It was the other way around, and I agree that there are many loopholes in it. When we talk about the issue of ethics, again, this comes back to the differences between us up here. As a doctor, my view of what ethics is very different than what I think lawyers view ethics as being. You know, I deal with ethical issues every day at work, when it comes to end-of-life issues with families, when it comes to issues with healthcare. So it's a much more common sense approach to what ethics are. And frankly, I think the things that are discussed as being ethical versus unethical, it's splitting of hairs as opposed to really saying, does this make common sense? Does this pass the sniff test? So in Congress, what I would do and my pledge is that I will always enforce in my character, in my presentations, that I will only serve the needs of my constituents, that I'll never be beholden to any special interests, that I will strive for the greater good of our nation and defend and protect the Constitution of the United States, and in doing those things, maintain my ethical standards.
Mr. Bailey.
Last I heard, insider training is against the law. I think it's important that Congress pass a law that says we shall not exempt ourselves from any law we pass. Period. There are leaders, they should lead by example. Thank you.
Over 300 members of Congress have signed pledges. And they've signed pledges for a relatively modest amount of money from special interests to get their support for campaigns. So just think about the notion of someone going to Congress, this sacred office, and giving away their vote to someone else. If that isn't first evidence of what's wrong with our Congress, I don't know what is. The Constitution established our Congress to make laws that's in the best interest of the country. They haven't done that. They haven't done that for decades. Right? There's so many issues out there that everyone knows we need comprehensive reform against. But they don't do that. What they do is they sign pledges. Right? So from the beginning of my candidacy, I've been running as an independent-minded individual, someone who's not tied to special interests, and I've put forth very specific platforms around ethical reforms in Congress. Obviously, the Stock Act should be adopted. That's, I don't think there's much debate about that. And as I said, we need redistricting reform. We need term limits, right? Because we need to change the motivation of why people are voting. At the end of the day, incentives and motivation matter. And when we have a large percentage of Congress that's focused and has incentives and are motivated just to get reelected and to get power within their party, it's a problem. And so we really need to think about the motivations of the people in Congress. We need to get them out of the business of signing pledges and giving away their votes to special interests. We need to get them back in the business of doing what's in the best interest of the American people, which is why Congress was established. Congress is a wonderful institution, perhaps the greatest governmental institution ever organized, if you look at what it's done for this country across time. So we don't fundamentally need to change Congress, we need to change the motivation of why people are serving in Congress, right? Are they doing it from their heart, right? Are they doing it in the context of public service, or are they doing it as part of a career? That's my view.
All right. Now there's a time for closing statements, but keep in mind there was a question from the floor, which is completely appropriate to think about as you're doing this. Share with us your motivation for entering this race, and as a closing idea, what are your key differences with the other people on the panel? And as we've kept up today, we're going to start with Mr. Little.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, from the beginning of my campaign, I said that this was about the people. This is about us restoring pride and integrity to our leadership in Congress and the way our leadership is viewed around the world. Throughout this campaign process, we've heard lots of arguments about who's doing what for what reasons. What we haven't been talking about is why people have disconnected from this process. People have disconnected because they feel disenfranchised by what our leadership tries to push down our throats. People have disconnected because they're not happy with the leadership that represents their ideals. People are not happy because Congress has lost its way. Congress has lost its way because it's controlled by special interests. The only special interest I'm interested in is your special interest. I live in this county, I live in this district, I'm raising my children here, and I expect to grow old and possibly die here. And I could not sit back and not participate in this process if I felt like that was in jeopardy. And it was my position that it was. The people were being ignored. You don't need large sums of money to make progress. You don't need the power of the leadership to make progress. You need the people. And it's the people's endorsement that I'm looking for on April 3rd. My name is Ron Little for Congress. Thank you very much.
First and foremost, please tell your neighbors that you're not going to be voting for Chris Van Hollen. When I'm down here in Montgomery County, I try to tell my fellow Democrats what life will be like if Roscoe Bartlett is your congressman next year. A congressman who doesn't share your values, who doesn't listen. And so it's an opportunity for us to finally have a congressman that we can be proud of, one who does share our vision for the future, as you have had. The new 6th deserves much better than what the old 6 has had for 20 years. I believe that I'm uniquely qualified to serve this district. I grew up in the DC suburbs. I'm a product of Maryland public education from the 3rd grade all the way through college at College Park, medical school at the University of Maryland, and then my residency training. I've lived and worked in Montgomery County when I did HIV/AIDS research at the National Institutes of Health. And now I live out west in Frederick County, where I serve the veterans of Western Maryland. While the other 2 major candidates in this race have spent the last 10 weeks going after each other and tearing each other down, I've been talking about the issues that are important to you and me. I'm focused on beating Roscoe Bartlett in November. And my fellow Democrats, it's our time. It's our time to win this seat, and with your help on April 3rd and in November, I will be your honorable representative in Congress. Thank you.
For the past 20 years, the 6th District has been neglected. I'm from Washington County. I've served as an assistant public defender in the felony division for many years there. And I can tell you it is devastated. And the impact on the human toll from this man-made economic disaster brought about by the Republicans. Republicans say, don't kill the goose that lays the golden egg. A cute little farm metaphor that I'd like to carry further. We don't want to kill the goose that lays the golden egg, but we don't want to deed the goose the farm either. Because if we did, who'd take care of the chickens and the cows and the goats and the horses? Who would plant the corn? Who would reap the hay? Who would make sure the kids get on the school bus in the fall? Because by now everyone has to admit, and after 10 years of Bush tax cuts, we all know that the goose looks after the goose. We don't want to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. We just want to put a leash on it. We got to leash the goose. And I think that this is an exciting time for Democrats nationwide, but especially for the 6th District. We have a vision for the future of this district that is vibrant and growing, rebounding economy. All boats are lifted. And I think that when you go vote Democrat this fall, you can be voting for somebody on this table, on this panel. I'm honored to be among this number. These are all good men whose intent and purpose cannot be assailed. Question for you is going to come from the gut and in your heart. Who can you trust to fight for the working family's interest on the issues that are likely to be raised in the next 113th Congress? Banking reform, Medicare reform, Social Security reform. These are issues that go to the gut, and you have to guess, who can you trust? I'm Charles Bailey. I'm your working families candidate. Thank you.
So the employment situation in this country is much more than about economics. It's about American values. For the last 20 or 30 years, we've watched the standard of living of the average American go down. And a job, as we all know, is about dignity. It's about how people define themselves. It gives them a sense of pride and a sense of purpose. And we've watched as the trends of globalization and technology, two real trends that are actually accelerating, have destroyed the middle class in this country and destroyed the standard of living of the average American. So the question we have to ask ourselves as citizens is, do we want this to continue? Or do we want a Congress to do something about this? Do we want a Congress to put in place the policies that we all know we need to do? Policies around education, policies around immigration reform, policies around energy. Do you want someone in Congress who actually has experience creating jobs and creating jobs that have a high standard of living? That's what I've spent my last 20 years doing. I believe I have by far the most expertise to take on that challenge. My wife and I have also defined ourselves across the last 20 years through the lens of community service. Serving our community has been incredibly important to us. We've had a whole portfolio of nonprofit activities and charitable engagement and have been recognized for our commitment to our community. And we made this decision to do this through that lens, to take the expertise that I've learned across the last 20 years as a job creator and apply them against the great challenge of our day, which is reversing these trends, and doing it in a way as your representative in an honorable fashion, where you'll be proud to have me as your representative. I have ideas and I have the right approach, which is why I believe the Washington Post has endorsed me, which is why I believe President Clinton has endorsed me, which is why I believe Donna Edwards and Doug Duncan and so many other people have endorsed my candidacy, because of ideas and because of my purpose. Thank you.
My motivation is my 3 children and the concern about what kind of country they're going to inherit. And as I've talked to thousands of voters over the last several months, I hear the same concern for them, and that's my motivation also. Is the next generation going to have it better than this generation? That's an important question that many are asking themselves. And in America, we aspire for it to be better for the next generation. Look, we've got some critical problems that we're facing in this country. Problems related to our economy and fiscal policy, problems with respect to the assault that we're seeing on reproductive rights, problems that we're seeing on the horizon with respect to our energy policy and the environment, whether we move forward in making sure that people have access to health care or we move backward. These are the discussion issues that are before this Congress. I've got a proven track record in the Maryland State Senate. 10 years ago, I defeated a 16-year Republican incumbent legislator. I think I'm best qualified to defeat a 20-year incumbent congressman, Republican congressman, on November 6th. I've also got a track, you can applaud for that. I've also got a track record in making sure that we invest in education. I've got a track record in making sure that we expand healthcare access. I've got a track record in making sure that we promote green jobs and a green economy. I've got a track record in looking out for our veterans. That's why the local teachers, the state teachers, and the NEA have endorsed my candidacy. That's why the League of Conservation Voters and the Sierra Club have endorsed my candidacy. I've been a fighter for working families. That's why the AFL-CIO, Progressive Maryland, and dozens of other labor organizations have endorsed my candidacy. I've been a champion for small business and for veterans. That's why business organizations and veterans groups have endorsed my candidacy. I feel that I'm best qualified to win on November 6th, but more importantly, I feel I'm best qualified to be your representative in the 6th Congressional District as your congressman. Thank you.
Let's have a round of applause for all of the candidates who did a marvelous job today. Thank you so much. And let me also thank you all for coming today. If you haven't had a chance,
Thank you all for being here.
and for the very civil and wonderful tone that this entire afternoon has been. AARP is working across the nation to get your feedback on Medicare and Social Security. So if you haven't been to the table, please stop by and fill out a questionnaire or do so online. In the meantime, please make sure your neighbors vote, and your friends vote, your relatives vote, and please make sure we get it done on April the 3rd. Thank you all so much, and thank you to Len Lazarick and MarylandReporter.com and to Montgomery College. Thank you all on behalf of AARP.